Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Snow Only Plus. Thank you for joining us today. Here at Snow Only Plus, we help our clients that are looking to buy ski homes. We help them get across the line successfully along their buying journey by connecting them with local experts at the right time along their purchasing journey. Today, I'm super excited to be joined by Sharon Revel from CAFP. CAFP are our preferred French mortgage broker. Hi, Sharon. How are you?
Hi, Jake. Fine, thank you. You?
Yes, I'm good, thank you. So, yeah, today Sharon is going to be talking all things French mortgage. We've got some really good questions lined up for her. So, yeah, without further ado, Sharon, would you like to introduce yourself and your company?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jake. So I'm Sharon. As Jake pointed out, I'm a French mortgage broker. I live in France and have done so now for 25 years. I'm British, and I've been a French mortgage broker now for 22 years. So I work for CAFP. CAFP is France's largest mortgage broker, and I run the international team here at CAFP. We're a whole of market broker. We have 230 branches throughout the country, and we have just over 1,000 brokers throughout France. I specialize in non-resident, expat, and international profile customers, which is why I help your customers, Jake.
Yes, that's amazing. The crossover's nice. I had the pleasure of joining you in France a couple of weeks ago, which was very nice. So, yeah. So tell us how. I guess how. Next question is how can you help Snow Only Plus clients along their buying journey?
Well, one of the things to consider is that French mortgages are very different to UK mortgages, to American mortgages. France has its own lending criteria. We don't talk about income multiples, we talk about debt to income ratios. And the French banks are very particular when it comes to lending, they're very strict. And France is a very bureaucratic country, and everything for our foreign clients seems it's the wrong way round compared to their home countries. So where we come in is we help get your customers in a position where they can make an offer on a property, have confidence that they can move forward and obtain a mortgage, because in France you'll be asked to sign a purchase contract, whether it's a reservation contract or a compromis de vente, before you obtain mortgage approval. And that contract is subject to mortgage approval. So it's reassuring for your customers to speak to a professional that has whole of market knowledge. Some brokers will say we can't lend on leaseback. Other brokers will say we can't lend under 250,000. Other brokers will say we can't lend to American customers. As whole of market brokers, we're able to give your customers that insight and help them gaining confidence in their journey and put them in a position where they're able to move quickly when they find the right property.
Yeah, amazing. And that is a super vital step to, a lot of our clients leverage a foreign mortgage or a French mortgage in this case. So having that knowledge and the understanding of the French mortgage system before they even, in some cases go out and view properties is super useful information for them to have, right? And connecting with you as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Nice. So I guess this leads into, the next question that we've got here, which is what is the general criteria for getting a French mortgage? I know you said it's a bit different to, for non-residents. A lot of our clients are non-residents in France. So what would you say is the sort of like general rule of thumb of, being able to get a mortgage?
Well, I will try and keep it quite simple because I've been a broker, as I said, for 22 years. And if you do something that long, you're quite passionate about what you do. So I will try not to give you the whole Bible and just keep things simple.
Yeah.
So lending here is based on affordability. And it's not actually the bank that sets the criteria. They have their own interpretation of the criteria. It's the French government that sets the criteria. And the rule with regards to debt to income ratio is your monthly debt related outgoings cannot be above 35% of your monthly income. So concretely, what that actually means, and I do sometimes speak a little bit strongly rather than just French or English, so I do apologize if I come up with words that aren't 100% English or 100% French in that. But basically, they look at what your sustainable income is, i.e. what income they can verify on your tax returns, on your tax documents. If you're self-employed or a company owner, they will go back over 3 years and take an average unless you have very big differences. If you're employed, they will look at your salary. If you have bonuses or commission, etc., they will do a 3-year average of those bonuses and commission. So that's how they define your income. If you have rental income, they will take, depending on the bank, between 70 and 90% of that rental income that you earn, of the gross rental income. And then for your debt-related outgoings, obviously the new French mortgage, but they will also look at what your mortgage commitments are in your home country. If you have an interest-only mortgage, sometimes they convert it to a capital repayment mortgage. We don't really have interest-only mortgages in France. They will look at, see if you have lease agreements, hire purchase agreements, if you pay rent. If you don't pay off your credit cards in full, then they will take the monthly amount that you pay on your credit cards and average it out. So then they look at all of your finances globally, so whether it's in the UK, in the US, in other countries, and do a debt to income ratio. If your debt to income ratio is over 35%, then there is no room for a new French mortgage, and legally the lenders cannot lend to you. So that's one of the criteria. Other criteria for non-residents are things such as having a personal contribution to put towards the property. We can't do a mortgage if you don't have any savings to put down, i.e. no down payment. They will also look at how much money you have left over after the purchase. They consider that if you buy a rental or an investment property in France, you should be in a comfortable financial position and have leftover savings, i.e. rainy day savings, in case you lose your job, in case you have unforeseen circumstances. I mean, we had the great example with COVID. How are you going to carry on paying the mortgage if your situation suddenly changes? So they look to see that you have that level of savings to kind of put you in a comfortable position. They don't want to put people in an uncomfortable financial position. In terms of other criteria, if you're kind of new in your job, they will say, well, they'll look at your career history and see if you've just completely changed sector and industry. That could be a sign that your application would be fragile. And in terms of your age, they also look that the mortgage is paid off by age 75. So that can have an impact as well on borrowing capacity.
Okay, amazing. Sounds like there's a lot of useful information in there, but like you said, it's probably on a case-by-case basis, right? Depending on what country you're from and what your unique circumstances are. So super useful there. Thanks for sharing that with us. What would you say the lowest amount you can borrow on in France is, just for our clients on the lower end of the spectrum, and subsequently the highest amount as well? Like, what does the range go from?
Well, the lowest end is minimum is actually 21,500 in France, but in reality it's very difficult to find a bank that can lend that, and that's for two reasons. One, it's not profitable for them to do a really small mortgage, but also we have something in France called the usury rate, and the usury rate is the maximum that the APRC can be on a mortgage, and that's set every quarter by the Banque de France. And if the APRC on a mortgage goes beyond the rate that they publish, a lender legally cannot lend. Why that's important and impacts small mortgages is because your associated costs of buying the property, such as the cost of registering the legal charge, the lender's arrangement fee, we have mandatory life insurance in France. All of those associated costs are included in the APRC. So when you have a small mortgage, the costs represent a greater percentage, and we find ourselves above the usury rate. So that's why at some points we have to say to maybe older customers whose life insurance costs more, well, actually we can't lend because we've gone over the usury rate. It's not because the lenders say we can't lend, because maybe for like a 30-year-old customer, we can do the mortgage because the life insurance costs less. As a general rule of thumb, right now in December 2025, it's difficult to get a mortgage under 80,000-90,000 euros.
Okay.
If we talk about our older customers, say people who are in their late 50s or mid 50s to 60s, then that amount is going to be actually higher. It's going to be more in the region of 150,000 euros at the moment. In January, we will have a new usury rate published, so that could change. But they're the things we look at.
Okay, perfect.
And maximum mortgage amount, Well, kind of the sky's the limit. It's possible to go mortgages up to 40 million euros, sometimes just with one bank, sometimes with multiple banks co-financing together. Mid-range mortgages anywhere between 500 to 5 million. That's what we do on a daily basis. So we're very comfortable with our banking partners being able to help, and also for the higher end of the mortgages as well.
Yeah, perfect. Just for clarity as well, we're dealing with a couple of clients at the moment around about that spectrum, right between that 500,000 to that like 5.5 million is the most recent one. So if anyone's on the call that has a budget within that price range, we can definitely facilitate. And I guess moving on to loan to value, how much deposit amount are we looking at on it as a general rule of thumb for our non-resident clients looking to buy in France?
So depending on the bank, because things do differ. As a brokers, we work obviously with multiple banks, well, with all of the banks in the French market. And generally speaking, sometimes we will do 100% finance. And rather than a customer put down a deposit on the property, they're actually leveraging really against the property to avoid paying wealth tax, etc. So they leverage against the property and they put their 20 or 30% deposit in pledged funds or assets under management with the bank. Rather than in the property itself. So generally speaking, it's between 15 and 30%, but whether we put that with the bank or in the property depends on the client's profile and on which banks we can use for them.
Okay, cool. That's interesting to know as well for if someone's got assets under management and whatnot. So there's alternatives there as well. How long would you say the process takes? So from somebody contacting you, again, I know these questions are probably very hard to answer, but just as a general rule of thumb, what would you say the best process is for a client to contact you? When should they be contacting you? And how long does it take from initial contact to say getting a pre-qualification for a mortgage?
So from really on the pre-qualification side, it's quite a simple process, but it depends on the complexity of the client situation, because how we study an application for pre-qualification is we will look at it in the same way as the banks will, i.e. we won't just base it on figures the customer gives us, we will actually ask them to provide documentation. So depending on their situation, obviously somebody who is salaried, has one mortgage, savings, we have less documents to verify than somebody who has 5 companies, multiple properties, etc. So in terms of the pre-qualification process, as soon as you think about buying a property in France, it's a great idea to get in touch. You don't have to have found a property, because we can actually help you assess how much you can borrow. So that way, maybe you can afford that extra bedroom in the ski apartment, or maybe you can afford the underground car parking and you didn't know you could. So we can help orientate you on budget, but we can also help avoid disappointment and traveling on trips where maybe afterwards you find out that you're not eligible for a French mortgage. And by knowing what your capacity is, it can help you avoid missing opportunities rather than going after a property which you then can't afford. As I said earlier, French lending criteria is very different. And the biggest thing that people normally come up against is the debt to income ratio criteria, because it's so different to other countries. So in terms of timings, going back to your question, it can be a day or a couple of days, depending on how busy things are as well, because it's not a computer that looks at the application, it's actually us as brokers, and it's the same in the banks. It's actually the bankers and the underwriters that do the scoring on the applications, that study the mortgage documentation, etc. We don't have automatic systems that give like green ticks here. So we're going into ski season. And I'm based near the mountains, and I can see the number of people flying into Geneva Airport at the moment is just amazing. I can see snow on the mountains outside, and it's getting busy. So the timings are going to take maybe a couple of days to a week for a complex situation. Afterwards, when we come to actually formally apply with the bank, it's about the same. It depends how busy the bank is. It depends when you're applying. A lot of people will be off on holiday over the Christmas period, but there are other times in the year in France where things just come to a standstill. Just to name a few, May, we have lots of bank holidays. It's why France is really great as well. We have lots of bank holidays. But the bankers take the time off as well, so we get bottlenecks. And other times as well, mid-July and August, nothing happens here. So depending on when you're buying in the year, the delays can be impacted. But when you have your reservation contract, we always look at the delay you have and we advise, oh, that's going to be difficult because of the time of year. Or if it's really urgent, then we have different bank partners that can be quicker than others. There might be a difference on rate, but it depends what your emergency and what your priority is as well.
Yeah, of course. I know we've had experience with that firsthand with some of our clients, that they're now trying to get things done quickly and they're chasing their tails a little bit. So it's always good to try and get in touch with ourselves at Snow Only Plus, and also yourself as well, as early as possible, just so there's no surprises on the back end when people want things doing. We usually find that people find their property and then they're like, oh, right, okay, now, let's get everything sorted. It's like, okay, but now you've got to wait for X, Y, and Z. So that's why we always say, like you said earlier, get your ducks in a row. As soon as you know that you're going to be taking this step, then it's always beneficial to speak to the experts as soon as possible, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. So can you tell us a bit about French mortgage rates and how the things looking at the moment? Again, might have put you on the spot with this one because I know it's constantly changing, but yeah, just a bit of a general information on the rates, and because I know a lot of clients ask me about rates.
So interest rates in France are generally fixed for the duration of the mortgage. We do have a couple of lenders that offer variable or tracker rates, as we would call them. They tend to be more in the private banks. But generally speaking, the rates are fixed for duration. So i.e. at the moment, a 20-year fixed rate can vary between 3.55% to 4.2, 4.3%, and that's fixed for duration. Other things that can influence the interest rate of the mortgage are things such as whether you're buying in your personal name or through a company structure. And that's a French company structure, not like your UK company or your US company. So they can have an influence on rates. The shorter the duration, the lower the interest rate is. And the maximum duration we can have for French mortgages is 25 years. And that attracts a higher interest rate than, say, a 15-year mortgage would.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for answering that one. And I guess availability to get a mortgage on leasehold properties, leasehold versus freehold. There's a lot of talk around that. Can you shed any light on that?
Yep. So I'm based near the mountains, and we have a lot of leaseback properties in the mountains here, because that's how they keep the ski resorts and they provide accommodation, etc. And it's also what people want to do in terms of buying, because it fits in well with their investment plans and being able to use the property. So the banks here are quite comfortable with that. Not all banks will lend on a leaseback property, because sometimes they're not so familiar with how they work, and maybe they're not used to dealing with them as much because they're quite specific and related to ski properties particularly, but we have them in the south of France and towns, etc. too. And we can finance those. So generally we will be financing on the ex-VAT, so the VAT exclusive price. And sometimes, depending on the client's profile, we can do a short-term loan to cover the VAT element. So we have to still fit within the debt to income ratio if we do that short-term finance to finance the VAT. So i.e. that means we have to still fit within the 35% debt to income ratio. So sometimes it's not available for everybody, but where a profile allows, it is possible.
Amazing. Yeah, I think the lending on the VAT could be super useful for some of our clients if they wanted to, like you were saying before, extend their budget a little bit to what they thought they could afford. So, excuse me. Okay, cool. Well, I think that's it from my side. I don't know. I guess to wrap up, it's always important to try and get in touch with the experts as soon as possible, just so you've got all the information and you know exactly how much you can be borrowing for your French property in France. Sharon, I don't know if you've got any last words, but yeah, thanks very much for joining.
I would just say be prepared to provide a lot of paperwork. France is a bureaucratic country, and the quicker you provide the paperwork, the quicker you'll get the mortgage.
Perfect. Good. Great advice. Thank you very much for joining us. And to everyone that's been listening this far, thank you very much. Please follow the YouTube channel, like, subscribe, all that jazz. We'll be posting a lot of educational content on there, especially with people like Sharon and some other experts along the buying journey as well. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you, Sharon, for joining, and we'll catch you on the next one.